Okay, we are live. Hi everyone, my name is Millie Young and it is my absolute pleasure to be here with you today to talk about kickstarting women founders. In this presentation, I'll be covering some of the core challenges facing women founders in the ecosystem and how EnergyLab addresses those challenges through our Women in Clean Energy Fellowship program, a program that since its inception in 2019 has equipped 54 aspiring women founders with the knowledge, the skills, and the confidence to consider entrepreneurship as a career path. I'll later be joined by female founder Alina Deeney and investor Melissa Chan to offer some of their insights on how the ecosystem can support more women founders, as well as their advice for aspiring women entrepreneurs. But firstly, I would like to begin by acknowledging the traditional owners of the land upon which we meet or we convene on Zoom today. For me, it is the Noongar people of southwest Western Australia, and I pay my respects to their elders past, present and emerging. I'd also like to acknowledge that while I'm here today speaking to the importance of diversity in gender in innovation and entrepreneurship, diversity in all its forms is integral to an equitable and innovative future. So, what do I mean when I say kickstarting women founders? We have heard it all before. Women are wildly underrepresented in the Australian startup ecosystem, and many of us understand the barriers. And while the stats also show that once established, women-led startups lower failure rates, produce more capital efficient companies, and see better returns, we're still, in fact, seeing low numbers of women-led businesses. So the big hurdle here is, how do we get more founders into the pipeline in the early stage? How do we get more women taking those very first steps? So firstly, a brief word on EnergyLab. EnergyLab is Australia's largest energy sector startup accelerator and network dedicated to the energy transition. And we run a number of programs to support energy entrepreneurs across the spectrum of the entrepreneurial journey, from idea all the way through to scale up. We've supported over 100 startups in the last 4 years, yet only a quarter of these startups have a woman on the founding team. 22.3% of startups in Australia are founded by women. And for clean energy startups, that number is more like 10%. Now, these are really important numbers because as tech startups redesign the world, women are missing out on opportunities to build the future. And as the ecosystem comes together to tackle current challenges, particularly after this pandemic, it's really essential that all be heard, not merely for equality and inclusivity's sake, but because diversity really begets better innovation. And so to move the needle on these numbers in the energy sector, we started the Women in Clean Energy Fellowship in 2019. And I'll take a step back for a moment and briefly touch on the literature around barriers that women face, because by understanding some of these barriers, I speak to how we designed a program to overcome them. So firstly, unconscious bias. Implicit gender biases are insidious and widespread, and they're often reinforced from a young age. Things like girls aren't good at math, or women are not creative or innovative. Lower confidence and lower risk profile. So generally speaking, lower levels of self-confidence and higher fear of failure than men. And these barriers for women stem from the core of the female psyche: imposter syndrome, limiting self-beliefs, along with the need to feel ready or needing to have all the ducks in a row or knowing all the information before diving in. A lack of visibility. So there are fewer women entrepreneur role models, and women are less likely to know someone who is an entrepreneur and therefore less likely to be one themselves. We've all heard the adage, you can't be what you can't see. A lack of network strength. So women lack the same strength in professional networks as men, which makes it hard for them to draw upon these networks when starting a business. Women also face increased difficulties expanding their professional networks as they are less to self-promote. Shortage of funding. So the gender pay gap and the fact that women are less likely to reach higher levels in the workplace than men mean that they have less personal capital to self-fund a startup in the early stages. There's also less equity funding flowing to women-led startups. So far in 2020, female founders represent less than 10% of VC in Australia. And lastly, there's a lack of opportunity beyond early training. So that is a lack of opportunity and support beyond the early stages to build female-led ventures. So these barriers to women often result in a lack of gender diversity in the Australian startup ecosystem. And a lack of diversity says to me that as a country, we're leaving too much on the table. There is so much untapped potential in our passionate, talented, and creative women. And as I said earlier, diversity is key to innovation. If this was a startup pitch deck, this would be my solution. We know why diversity is important. We understand the barriers. So what's the solution? At EnergyLab, the Women in Clean Energy Fellowship, a 12-week program to support more women to start clean energy and clean tech startups. So what does that look like? And how do we address each of these barriers facing women? Firstly, we promote conscious gender bias, and this works beyond the YSEF program. We aim for diversity in our programs and promote conscious gender bias in all of our recruitment efforts for both our programs and for startups pitching to our angel group. We work to confidence in women. In the Women in Clean Energy Fellowship, we create a can thrive and be confident to test ideas. We run sessions to help women get comfortable with self-promotion and sessions to help women overcome imposter syndrome, fear of failure, and limiting self-beliefs. We also have training and other opportunities for women to build confidence in their pitching and their presentation skills. We increase visibility of female founders. So visibility and hearing the experience of people who are like you is a big part of becoming self-efficacious. So during the program, we introduce aspiring founders to successful women role models and host workshops and fireside chats where participants can hear the stories and journeys of other women founders. And we publicly promote stories of women founders in our networks to help change perceptions and strengthen the pipeline of women who are interested in entrepreneurship. The program also helps women build strong networks of men champions and allies through workshops, networking events, and mentorship. We increase opportunities for funding. So one key element to gaining funding is, of course, the pitch. We hold a pitch night at the end of the program and give women plenty of opportunities to practice their pitch and presentation skills. We're also in the process of formulating a pitch night for pre-seed women founders leaving this program to support them in the early stages of their growth. We think this is a crucial of the puzzle since once established, women-led startups outperform. We just need to get them through these initial stages. And lastly, we create opportunities for female founders beyond the Women in Clean Energy Fellowship program. So to support women in these early stages, we have paved a clearly defined pathway from our Women in Clean Energy Fellowship program through to our pre-acceleration or incubation program, which are both stepping stones into our acceleration program. So as you can see, this fellowship is not just about giving women the knowledge and the skills in entrepreneurship, which of course are very important, but it's deeper than that. We work to create an environment where women can let go of their fears, of preconceived notions that they can't make mistakes or that they aren't innovative. And we've created a space where women can come up with wild ideas, be courageous, learn from one another, grow their networks, and take those important first steps into entrepreneurship. The aim of this program when we established it in 2019 was to see more women starting clean energy and clean tech. And I'm really proud to say that in our most recent cohort of our program, we actually had a 50-50 male-female founder balance. So as we rebuild and we redefine sectors following the pandemic, the ecosystem can benefit greatly from greater diversity in its founders. So to encourage more women entrepreneurs, we can check our unconscious gender bias. We can have greater visibility of women founders. We can start dedicated programs, mentorship, and support networks for women founders. And we can better facilitate access to funding at all stages of the development, but particularly in the early stages. So the point really is to support more diversity in the startup ecosystem, and the benefit will be a more equitable, more inclusive, and more innovative long-term solutions to some of our biggest challenges. I would now like to introduce my two wonderful panel guests. Joining me today are Alina Dini and Melissa Chan. If you could please join me on this virtual stage. Alina and Melissa join me with their insights from a founder and investor perspective on how the ecosystem can better support more women, as well as their advice for aspiring female entrepreneurs. So Alina is the CEO and founder of Whirl, an online marketplace that reinvents the EV shopping experience, making it fun, easy, and accessible to learn about and try out EVs. Alina is an EnergyLab Women in Clean Energy Fellowship alumni, and some of her noteworthy accomplishments include launching Tesla's $2 billion credit trading program, and as a social scientist, shining light on the significance of customer experience in the energy market. Welcome, Alina. And next, we have Melissa Chan. Melissa advises on private investments for a family office in Sydney. She's previously worked as a management consultant specialising in business strategy and investment, and was also an advisor to the Australian government. Melissa is also currently producing a documentary with Sydney Women exploring women's financial vulnerability. So welcome, Melissa. It's great to have you here. Melissa, I spoke a lot about barriers, so I'd love to turn the tables. What do you see as the biggest opportunities for women founders?
Yeah, I mean, I think the biggest opportunity, and you alluded to this, Millie, was actually that women founders have the opportunity to reimagine the world we live in. So, when we take a step back or up from all of this, startups are really about disruption and innovation and rethinking about how we choose to do things. So whether that's the way that we live or the way that we work or the way that we interact with each other. And that's a really, really exciting opportunity. The possibilities for that are endless. So I think really for women founders, there's an opportunity to create and innovate for the future.
Excellent. Thanks, Melissa. Alina, throwing over to you. So you're an alumni of EnergyLab's Women in Clean Energy Fellowship. Why did you apply to be a part of the fellowship? And as an aspiring female founder, what did you feel you needed from a program like this to help you get started?
Thanks, Millie. I came upon the Women in Clean Energy Fellowship opportunity by chance, but it just so happened that at that point in my career, I was looking for an opportunity to do something a little bit different to what I had done before. I found myself feeling a little bit frustrated in my work paradigm, wanting to engage in more innovative activities or be more involved in developing the growth opportunities in the businesses I worked for, but not being able to navigate the internal politics well. So when I happened upon the Clean Energy Fellowship, I was determined to become a member. I was so excited to have been accepted. And then through the program, what I came to find was that EnergyLab was incredibly supportive in providing potential female founders with building blocks to help them understand not just how to grow a business, but actually the foundational pieces of entrepreneurship in relation to what was required to build your own business. And for me, demystifying those early stage steps that were required gave me the confidence to think about doing it myself. On top of that, EnergyLab specifically has a fantastic network of more than 250 mentors and has brought together an incredible group of more than 50 women who are like me, really interested in doing something a little bit different in their roles at work, whether it be starting a company or looking for a new opportunity or taking that bold step to make a suggestion or pitch a proposal internally that they might not have done otherwise. So in that respect, it's been fantastic to have found a group of peers that I can continue with.
Great. And can you speak a little more around how the program helped supported you to start well?
Yeah, absolutely. I have worked in a number of sectors in my career, having spent time in government, academia, and in business. And as a social scientist, I had many ideas about how to innovate energy technology adoption. But what I wasn't sure was how to take my academic findings and make them commercially viable. What EnergyLab helped me do was provide me with specific resources, examples from other founders, and specifically tasks that I could undertake to train myself to think about my ideas in a commercial setting. And what that really helped me do was realize how I could take my innovations and action them into reality. So more specifically, learning how to communicate my ideas in the form of a saleable pitch was incredibly useful. Understanding the addressable market for my product and validating that thinking through specific research with customers. For Whirl specifically, we've validated the concept with in-person interviews and a survey. So I know very well that those current data points support the research that I undertook as a PhD student 5 years ago.
Great, thanks, Alina. Mel, 4 out of 10 of Australia's top VC firms have women partners. How do you think this impacts investment in women ups?
Yeah, I mean, the impact is that we have more female decision makers, and I think that can only be a good thing for women-led startups. When women are involved in investment decisions, it means that there's an added richness, there's a new dimension and different perspective to the investment discussion itself. So it really comes back to, I guess, what you were alluding to in your presentation before, that it's about this issue of diversity, and whether that's about gender or ethnicity or age or any other factors, having different voices in the room means that we're actually just creating a world that actually works well for everyone, not just a subsection of the population.
Great. And just further to that, from an investor perspective, what can the ecosystem do to better support women founders, in your opinion?
Yeah, really, really great question. I loved what Alina was saying about how the program, the EnergyLab program, helped to action ideas into reality. And I think there are different roles for different players. So on the accelerator or incubator side, we really need more programs like the one that you're doing, Millie. So being able to actively help female founders turn their ideas into real solutions, from concept to solution. We know, like you said, that women are less likely to be visible, they're less likely to be networked. So it's really about how can accelerators step in to help facilitate these connections and actively recruit promising female founders. I guess I would say, from an investor perspective, I would probably ask myself, if I was investing, or if I was an investor, 3 sort of key questions. Am I just investing in people and products that are familiar to me or exactly like me? 2, what unconscious biases do I have, and how do I begin to uncover and actually see them for what they are and to actually make steps to change them? And thirdly, how might I more actively become involved in supporting diversity? So again, across the spectrum. The unfortunate reality is that studies have shown that male and female founders are treated often quite differently in the pitching process by investors. So I think there was a study by the Harvard Business School that said that men are more likely to be asked questions about how they're going to win and dominate the market, whereas women are more likely to be asked about how they're going to mitigate risk or prevent losses. So we have a very different set of questions, and they're gendered. And so investors are really the ones that write the checks at the end of the day. And so it's up to us and to take on the responsibility of what we're choosing to do with that power to write the checks ultimately, and how we can support greater diversity.
Yeah, great. On that, Mel, so around this kind of unconscious bias and asking women more risk-related questions, do you have any advice on ways that people, particularly investors, can kind of check their unconscious gender biases?
Yeah, I mean, like you were saying before in the other question, having more women at the table, more women to make decisions, I think can really help to counterbalance and bring a different perspective to the discussion. I think also, again, like, investors can look at their existing portfolio and actually think, well, what have I invested in? What does that look like? And is there a particular pattern or patterning that's happening that alludes to the fact that there might be these unconscious biases? And there's also, often like coaching and things like that can really help. And perhaps even a data-driven approach. Like, is there a way to look at investments from a data approach that might help to, I guess, mitigate some of these biases?
Great. Thanks, Mel. Alina, from your perspective, what do you think the ecosystem can do to support more women at stage similar to you, in this early stage, sort of pre-seed?
It's a really great question, Millie. I've been thinking a lot about that question because there is no clear-cut answer, but building upon what Melissa has said, I think is important. The barriers to female entrepreneurship, in my mind, are really around actually taking the risk yourself. And so to the extent that we can enable women to be bold and break down for them the misconception that starting a company is difficult, it actually is a clear recipe of pieces of data that you must secure and research that you must conduct and risk that you must evaluate. But once you've completed those steps, it's the same level playing field for a male or a female. It's just a matter of the person having the bravery to execute. And so to the extent that we're able to support women to execute on their ideas and assure them that even if they fail, failure is part of the process. But there's this fantastic word now called pivot, which means you can actually just take your idea, change it a little bit, and keep going forward. And it might not be exactly as you imagined it in the first instance, but it can still be a successful outcome. So to the extent that we can impress upon women this, removing these barriers in their minds, I think we'll see a lot more women taking those steps.
Excellent. Courage is key. Thanks, Alina. We have a question from Bill. Is how can men be better allies to women in startups? Do either of you have any thoughts?
I think.
Look, I can say that
Go ahead, Alina.
I was just going to say, I've been very fortunate in that a number of my colleagues and friends have been incredibly supportive of the steps that I've taken as a female entrepreneur. And I have to say that just a couple of words of encouragement or asking how things are going, if they can be of any assistance, and noting when you offer your help, it's caveated with your own availability, of course. But any kind of words of encouragement or offers of support are really meaningful. And so I would encourage men to just be there.
Yeah, I think I would echo that, Alina, what Alina's saying. And Millie, I feel like men should take that slide from your deck, which talks about the challenges that women face, around not being visible and not having networks, and stick it somewhere, and to use that as an incentive or a guide, a bit of a guideline to remember that. Women face unique challenges that men don't, and how can they better support women in this way? So, when you meet a female founder as an investor, for example, can you introduce them to, 3 other people or provide them with other resources, knowing that they are less likely to be networked or less likely to be visible? So, yeah, and as Alina said, really just being there and to actively make steps to help them.
Brilliant. Both great answers, and thanks to you, Bill. So we have only 5 remaining, and I don't want this question to go unanswered. For all the aspiring women founders who may be listening to us, Mel, we'll start with you. What's your advice for those aspiring female founders?
My advice would be that we need you. We need more female founders. We need your creativity, your talent, your energy, your dynamism. The world's problems need solutions that are co-designed by both men and women. So my advice is to recognize the value of your contribution and the value of your participation, and just get started on whatever ideas you have, and to go after your vision.
Brilliant. Both great answers, and thanks to you, Bill. So we have only 5 remaining, and I'd like don't want this question to go unanswered. For all the aspiring women founders who may be listening to us, Mel, we'll start with you. What's your advice for those aspiring female founders?
You have and to go after your vision.
Great. And how about you, Alina?
Echoing what Melissa said, I would take it just a slight step further and say, just be bold. You have to take a risk in whatever it is you think is necessary, and just do something. And think about in terms of whatever your idea is or concept, what will happen if you don't act? If you don't act, then there is a missed opportunity for whatever program or business idea or organization you might have considered. And if you don't do it, then no one else will. So it's important for you to just be bold and take a risk.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, Alina. Thank you, Mel. Be bold, take a risk, execute, and lean in. Have the courage in yourself. And for those of you who are interested in hearing more about the Clean Energy Fellowship and are hoping to bring similar programs into your sector, whatever that may be, to support women, please reach out. You can find me on LinkedIn or on the EnergyLab website. And thank you so much, Alina and Mel, for joining me today. It's been an absolute pleasure to have you both championing women in the startup ecosystem. Looking forward to seeing many more of us very soon.
Thanks, Millie.
Thank you, Millie.